What happens when Hollywood's most physically imposing action star walks into the controlled battlefield of daytime television, and realizes too late that the smile across the table isn't welcoming, it's calculated? The lights inside the studio burned hotter than usual that morning. You could feel it even before the cameras rolled. The set of The View looked pristine from the outside, polished glass table reflecting overhead panels, mugs positioned at perfect angles, cue cards stacked like silent weapons. The audience buzzed with that familiar pre-show energy, the soft hum of whispered conversations, the shuffling of jackets, the faint smell of studio makeup lingering in the air conditioning. Then the stage manager gave the signal. Applause sign lit up. Music swelled. And he walked out. Vin Diesel. Broad shoulders filling the doorway. Dark shirt stretched across his frame. Calm expression, controlled, almost meditative. He moved like a man who understood cameras, not flashy, not arrogant, just steady. Professional. The kind of presence that usually commands respect without saying a word. He was there to promote a film. A simple 5-minute segment. Smile. Plug the movie. Talk about family. Shake hands. Leave. Routine. At least, that's what he thought. Across the table sat Joy Behar. She leaned back in her chair as he approached, fingers loosely wrapped around her mug. Her smile wasn't warm. It wasn't even neutral. It was sharp. The audience didn't notice it at first. But if you watched closely, really closely, you'd see it. That flicker in her eyes. The kind that says, I've already decided how this is going to go. The introductions were smooth. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed him with her usual steady tone. The crowd applauded. Vin nodded politely, shaking hands, lowering himself into his chair with deliberate calm. For a moment, everything felt normal. Too normal. The lighting cast a faint glow across the table. Reflections danced on the polished surface. You could hear the faint whir of studio fans keeping the air cool under the heat of the lamps. Joy leaned forward first. So, Vin, she began, voice deceptively light. Let's talk about your reputation. There it was. Not the movie. Not the franchise. Not the years of box office success. Reputation. The word hung in the air like a blade suspended by a thread. Vin blinked once. Slow. Controlled. A subtle tightening at the corner of his jaw, so quick most viewers wouldn't catch it. But it was there. There have been concerns, Joy continued, her tone sharpening slightly. About how you conduct yourself on set. Delays. Ego. Conflict with co-stars. Dwayne Johnson publicly called you out. Others have hinted at problems. What's going on behind the scenes? The studio went quiet. Not the polite kind of quiet. The uncomfortable kind. You could feel it in the way the audience stopped shifting in their seats. In the way Sarah Haynes lowered her eyes to the table. In the way Sunny Hostin's smile faded just slightly at the edges. Vin folded his hands together. Calm posture. Shoulders squared. Joy, he replied evenly, voice deep and controlled, I've worked with incredible professionals for decades. I show up prepared. I respect the crew. And I respect the process. He kept eye contact. Not aggressive. Not submissive. Measured. But Joy didn't blink. Come on, she said, the smirk returning. Dwayne Johnson doesn't just post something like that for no reason. Michelle Rodriguez doesn't just hint at tension. These aren't rumors from nowhere. There it was again. Push. Push harder. Vin inhaled slowly through his nose. The camera caught the faint expansion of his chest. His fingers tightened ever so slightly on the armrest. I came here to talk about my film, he said. Still controlled. But now there was an edge. A steel lining beneath the velvet. Joy laughed. Not a loud laugh. A dismissive one. Oh, so it's all lies now. That sound, that laugh, changed the temperature in the room. You could see it on Whoopi's face. A flicker of concern. The kind of look someone gives when they realize a conversation is veering off script. Vin's eyes darkened slightly. Criticism is one thing, he said. Ambush is another. The word hit. Ambush. For a fraction of a second, Joy's expression hardened. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. Ambush? We're asking tough questions. If you can't handle that, maybe that says something. The audience shifted again. A cough somewhere in the back row. Vin's knuckles turned faintly pale as his grip tightened. His voice dropped lower. You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work. If you want a real conversation, we can have one. But repeating tabloid headlines isn't journalism. The other hosts exchanged glances. Sarah's hand moved toward her mug but stopped midway. Sunny opened her mouth as if to interject, then thought better of it. Joy's smile disappeared completely now. Oh please, she shot back. You can't handle accountability. That's the problem. That word. Accountability. Vin's posture shifted. Just slightly. But enough. He leaned forward now, forearms resting on the table. The camera zoomed in instinctively, producers sensing something electric building beneath the surface. I handle accountability every day, he said. What I don't handle is being attacked for sport. The audience let out a faint murmur. Joy tilted her head. For sport. No, Vin. We ask what viewers are thinking. And viewers are thinking about gossip blogs, he countered, voice sharpening. The first crack. Subtle. But unmistakable. The air felt heavier. Hotter. Even the light seemed brighter now. Whoopi cleared her throat softly. Let's just keep it respectful, but Joy interrupted. Respectful? He's the one who's getting defensive. Vin exhaled slowly. But it wasn't calm anymore. It was containment. You want to talk about respect, he said quietly. And that's when the studio felt it. That shift. The energy moved from awkward to volatile. His eyes locked onto hers, not blinking now. You invite someone onto your platform, he continued, and instead of asking about their work, you try to dismantle them with accusations. Joy leaned back slightly, crossing her arms. Maybe the problem is you can't separate yourself from your image. A beat. Silence. Vin's jaw flexed. For the first time, the restraint looked thin. Paper thin. The audience sensed it too. Phones subtly lifted in the second row. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Joy delivered the next line almost casually. Maybe behind the muscles and the tough guy persona, there's someone who doesn't like being exposed. That was the moment. The precise second the room changed. Vin didn't speak immediately. He just stared at her. The camera zoomed closer. You could see it now, the storm gathering behind his eyes. Not loud. Not explosive. Yet. But building. Slowly. Deliberately. His hand left the armrest and flattened against the table. Tap. Just once. A quiet, controlled sound. You want exposure, he said softly. And even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Because the tone in his voice had shifted. From defensive. To dangerous. And what he was about to say next would make everyone in that studio realize, this was no longer a tough interview. This was war. The screen would soon cut to commercial. But not before something irreversible happened. And trust me. You are not ready for what comes next. The second his palm hit the glass table, something invisible shattered. Not the surface. Not the set. But the illusion. The illusion that this was still a daytime talk show. The illusion that smiles and moderation could contain what was rising beneath the surface. You want exposure? Vin Diesel repeated, his voice no longer calm, no longer carefully measured. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It had weight now. Density. Like thunder rolling across a distant sky before the storm finally breaks. Joy didn't lean back this time. She leaned in. Please, she said, folding her hands together like she was about to deliver a closing argument in court. Explain to us what we're missing. There was sarcasm in it. But also something else. Challenge. Vin inhaled slowly. His chest rose and fell in a controlled rhythm, but the tension in his neck was visible. A vein pulsed faintly under the studio lights. He wasn't shouting yet. But he was no longer playing defense. You want to talk about what's missing, he said. What's missing is context. What's missing is nuance. What's missing is the truth that doesn't fit into a headline. The audience remained frozen. Sunny Hostin shifted slightly in her chair, her fingers lightly gripping the edge of her notes. Sarah Haynes glanced toward the producers off camera, her eyes asking a silent question, are we letting this continue? Joy tilted her head again. So the truth is what, she pressed. That every co-star who's criticized you is wrong. That you're the only reasonable one in the room. The name hung between them like an unspoken presence, Dwayne Johnson. The feud that had fueled headlines for years. The tension fans had dissected frame by frame. Vin's eyes flickered for a split second. Then locked back on Joy. Working on a franchise like Fast and Furious, he began, voice steady but firm, means managing hundreds of personalities, thousands of moving parts. It's not a playground. It's not gossip. It's business. And business, Joy cut in sharply, means professionalism. A ripple went through the crowd. That word again. Professionalism. Vin's fingers curled slightly against the glass table. Exactly, he said. The way he said it, calm, deliberate, sent a shiver through the room. Because this wasn't denial. This wasn't excuse-making. This was escalation. Professionalism, he continued, means having tough conversations behind closed doors. It means protecting your team. It means taking responsibility for the entire machine. Joy let out a quiet scoff. Is that what you call it when someone publicly calls you difficult? And there it was again. Push. Push harder. The lighting seemed harsher now. Sweat glistened faintly along Vin's temple, catching the glare from overhead panels. He wiped it once with the back of his hand, not nervously, but deliberately. You keep repeating that narrative, he said, voice lowering again. As if you were there. The temperature in the room felt like it had climbed 10 degrees. Joy didn't flinch. I don't need to be there, she replied. When enough people speak up, it paints a picture. And when enough talk shows repeat it, Vin countered instantly, it becomes a weapon. Gasps. Small. But audible. Sunny's lips parted as if to speak. Whoopi shifted in her seat, adjusting her glasses. Anna Navarro pressed her palm flat against the table as though grounding herself. Joy's expression tightened. You think we're weaponizing journalism? I think, Vin said, leaning forward slightly, that there's a difference between asking questions and crafting a narrative. His tone wasn't explosive yet. But it was sharper. And now, something in Joy's posture changed too. She crossed her arms. You don't get to come onto this show and tell us how to do our jobs. The audience shifted again. A cough. A whisper. Someone's phone camera raised higher. Vin's shoulders squared. I didn't come here to tell you how to do your job, he replied. I came here to talk about my work. You decided that wasn't interesting enough. There it was. The first open accusation. Joy's eyes narrowed. "Oh, your work is interesting," she said coolly. "But the audience deserves to know who you are behind the scenes too." A beat. Silence. Vin's jaw flexed again. "And you think this," he gestured subtly around the table, "is how you find out?" Joy leaned forward abruptly. "Yes." The word cracked like a whip. The audience collectively inhaled. Vin's restraint finally began to fray at the edges. "You want honesty?" he asked quietly. Joy didn't answer. She didn't have to. He stood. Not dramatically. Not violently. But fast enough that his chair scraped loudly against the floor. The sound echoed through the studio like a warning shot. Several audience members gasped. One producer near the stage visibly stepped forward, then hesitated. Vin didn't loom over Joy. But he did rise to his full height, and in that moment, the visual contrast was undeniable. "This," he said slowly, looking down at the table, then back at her, "isn't honesty. It's spectacle." Joy rose halfway from her seat, her palms pressing against the table. "Don't try to intimidate me," she snapped. That word hit something deep. Vin's eyes flashed. "Intimidate," he repeated. His voice didn't rise. It dropped. Low. Controlled. Dangerously calm. "I haven't intimidated anyone." The studio felt smaller now. The lights hotter. The space between them tighter. Joy swallowed, barely noticeable, but visible under the camera's close zoom. "Then sit down," she demanded. Vin didn't. Instead, he leaned slightly forward. "You want the truth," he said again. "The truth is that Hollywood is complicated. Relationships are complicated. But you reduce everything to good guy, bad guy, because conflict sells." The audience murmured louder now. He wasn't yelling. He was dismantling. Piece by piece. "You talk about ego," he continued. "About control. About behavior. But you don't talk about leadership. You don't talk about carrying a billion-dollar franchise on your shoulders for 2 decades. Joy's lips pressed into a thin line. "Leadership doesn't excuse arrogance. An opinion doesn't equal fact," he shot back. The back-and-forth rhythm quickened. Shorter sentences. Sharper delivery. Sonny finally stepped in. "Maybe," she said carefully, voice steady but cautious, "there's room here to acknowledge that perception matters. Public statements matter. And maybe both sides could have handled things differently." For a moment, Vin's expression softened. A fraction. "You're right," he said quietly. Joy blinked. The tension flickered. But then she leaned back, shaking her head. "This isn't about perception. It's about pattern." And just like that, the fuse reignited. Vin turned back toward her fully. "You keep using that word," he said, frustration finally surfacing in his tone. "Pattern. Based on what? Headlines? Anonymous quotes? Social media drama? Based on reality," Joy snapped. The studio fell silent again. Vin laughed once. Short. Humorless. "Reality," he repeated. "You think this table defines reality?" Joy's face flushed slightly. "This table," she said coldly, "represents millions of viewers. And you think they're served by tearing people down?" The question hung heavy. Joy didn't answer immediately. And in that pause, something shifted. The audience, once uncertain, began to lean subtly toward Vin. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But you could feel it. The micro-expressions. The nods. The body language. Joy sensed it too. Her posture stiffened. You don't get to flip this, she said sharply. You don't get to come in here and play the victim. Victim. That word detonated something. Vin's calm shattered. His hand slammed down on the table. Harder this time. Water glasses rattled violently. Several audience members jumped in their seats. I am not playing anything, he thundered. And there it was. The explosion. Raw. Unfiltered. The microphones crackled slightly under the sudden spike in volume. I came here in good faith, he continued, voice echoing off the studio walls. You chose to make this personal. You chose to push. You chose to mock. Joy stood fully now. So did you. The two of them locked eyes across the glass battlefield. Neither blinking. Neither backing down. The energy in the room turned electric. Volatile. Even Whoopi, seasoned veteran of live television, looked uncertain now. Okay, she said loudly, trying to regain control. We need to take this down, but neither of them heard her. Because at that exact moment, Joy delivered the line that would make this interview irreversible. Maybe, she said coldly, voice trembling with contained anger, the reason you're reacting like this is because deep down, you know it's true. The audience gasped again. Vin froze. Not in anger. In something else. Something darker. His eyes locked onto hers. And when he spoke next, it wasn't shouting. It wasn't explosive. It was calm. Too calm. You have no idea, he said quietly, what's true. And that quiet tone. That steady, terrifying calm. Was far more dangerous than anything that came before. Because in that moment, everyone in the studio realized, the real breaking point hadn't happened yet. It was still coming. And when it did, there would be no coming back. There is a specific kind of silence that only exists seconds before something irreversible happens. It isn't loud. It isn't chaotic. It's heavy. And inside that studio, under the blinding white panels and the relentless gaze of live television cameras, that silence settled like a storm cloud ready to split the sky. Vin Diesel stood there, broad shoulders rising and falling slowly, his expression no longer explosive. No longer reactive. It was controlled again. But not calm. Controlled in the way a fault line is controlled, right before it breaks. Joy Behar remained standing too. Chin lifted. Jaw tight. Eyes flashing with defiance that bordered on desperation. The earlier smirk was gone. Now there was pride. Ego. And something fragile underneath it all, something she refused to show. The audience didn't move. No whispers. No coughing. Even the air conditioning felt distant. You have no idea what's true, Vin had just said. And the way he said it, low, steady, almost quiet, had changed everything. Joy folded her arms tightly across her chest. Then enlighten us, she replied, but her voice lacked its earlier bite. It trembled slightly at the edges. Vin looked down at the table for a brief second. When he looked back up, his expression had shifted from fury, to something far more personal. You want to talk about truth, he said. Let's talk about what it takes to hold a franchise together for 20 years. Let's talk about the pressure of being responsible for thousands of livelihoods. Let's talk about the sacrifices people never see. The camera zoomed in instinctively. His voice wasn't shouting anymore. It was resonating. You reduce everything to headlines, he continued. You sit behind this desk and talk about ego. But you don't talk about leadership. You don't talk about conflict resolution. You don't talk about what happens when creative differences explode under pressure. Joy tried to interject, but he didn't let her. For 2 decades, he said, I've carried characters that inspire people around the world. I've met kids in hospitals who tell me those movies gave them strength. I've met families who say those stories helped them reconnect. His voice cracked slightly. Not with anger. With weight. And you think that can be reduced to a tweet? The audience shifted. Something was changing. Joy opened her mouth again, but the words seemed slower now. That doesn't mean you're beyond criticism, she said. I never said I was, Vin replied instantly. But criticism isn't what you did today. His eyes locked on hers. What you did was attempt to humiliate. The word echoed. Humiliate. Joy's face flushed. I asked tough questions, she snapped. No, he said firmly. You framed accusations as facts. You pushed a narrative without balance. That's not tough. That's reckless. Whoopi leaned forward, her voice finally cutting through. Okay. We need to reset. But the reset never came. Because Joy, perhaps feeling the shift in audience energy, perhaps feeling control slipping, made one final move. You know what I see right now, she said, voice sharp but slightly unsteady. I see a man who can't handle not being the hero. The audience gasped again. Vin didn't explode this time. He stared at her. Long unblinking. And then he did something no one expected. He sat down. Slowly. Deliberately. The movement wasn't surrender. It was grounding. When he spoke again, his voice was calm, but devastatingly clear. You think this is about being a hero, he said quietly. No. This is about respect. He leaned forward slightly, hands clasped. I came here in good faith. You chose to turn it into confrontation. And now, instead of owning that choice, you're doubling down. Joy's confidence faltered for just a second. You called me bitter, she said, almost defensively. You mocked me first, he replied evenly. You laughed. You dismissed. You escalated. Her lips parted. No words came out immediately. And for the first time since the segment began, Joy Behar looked uncertain. The audience saw it. The cameras captured it. Vin continued. There's a difference between accountability and attack. You crossed that line. Sunny Hostin finally spoke again, softly. Maybe both sides. No, Vin interrupted gently but firmly. This isn't about both sides. He turned toward the audience briefly. This is about how we treat people when they sit in this chair. He looked back at Joy. You can ask anything. But intent matters. That sentence hung in the air longer than anything else that had been said. Intent matters. Joy swallowed. Her earlier fire had cooled into something defensive. I don't apologize for asking questions, she said quietly. And I don't apologize for defending myself, he replied. Silence. Raw. Unscripted. Whoopi glanced off camera, clearly receiving instructions through her earpiece. We're almost out of time, she said, voice tight. Vin nodded once. He stood again, but this time, slower. More controlled. I'm not here to win, he said. I'm not here to dominate a segment. I'm here to remind people that there's a human being behind every headline. He looked directly into the main camera. The red light blinked. Live. 2. Everyone watching, he continued, voice steady and powerful, don't let narratives replace truth. Don't let spectacle replace conversation. And don't let anyone convince you that standing up for yourself is the same as losing control. Joy didn't speak. Her expression was complicated now, pride mixed with shock, maybe even realization. Vin turned back to the table. I hope tomorrow's segment goes differently, he said quietly. For everyone's sake. And then, he walked off. No dramatic exit. No slamming doors. Just steady steps across the studio floor. The audience didn't clap. They didn't boo. They sat in stunned silence as he disappeared past the stage lights. The cameras lingered on the table. Joy stared forward, blinking slowly. Sarah looked shaken. Sunny looked reflective. Anna looked exhausted. Whoopi cleared her throat. "We'll be right back," she said softly. The screen cut to commercial. But the energy didn't cut. Social media exploded within minutes. Clips spread like wildfire. Viewers debated. Who was right? Who crossed the line? Was it accountability? Or was it ambush? Inside that studio, though, something else lingered. A crack in the illusion. Because for one unscripted moment, daytime television stopped being polished. It became raw. Human. Unfiltered. And whether you believe Vin Diesel lost his composure, or simply refused to be cornered, one thing is certain. Nobody who watched that broadcast will ever forget the tension that hung in the air that day. The moment the masks slipped. The moment the script dissolved. The moment live television reminded everyone that real emotion can't be edited. So what do you think? Was it justified? Was it too far? Or was it inevitable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you felt the tension, if you saw the shift, if you believe conversations like this reveal more than headlines ever could, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe for more cinematic deep dives into the moments that shake the entertainment world. And share this video with someone who needs to see what happens when the cameras can't look away. Because sometimes, the real story begins when the script falls apart.